Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I want to look over a couple of tweets and speculate on what Elon Musk is talking about, as well as the consequences of his thoughts and Tesla's thinking that's being revealed that will actually have a major impact on the US market and potentially globally. So first, let's take a look at a couple of these developments, and then we will talk about it in more detail. So the first post is from earlier today at 3:24 a.m. to be precise. Version 14 of Tesla's full self-driving feels sentient. That is quite the word. Sentient means like conscious, like we would think of humans as sentient beings. And this is in response to Jed Dorschmeyer on CNBC talking about how great robotaxis are. Elon responded to that version 14. It feels sentient, basically. And then he says he was just on version 13. Version 14 is the second biggest update to Tesla AI Autopilot ever after version 12. It feels alive. So version 12 from version 11, if you're not old enough to remember this stuff, I started testing full self-driving with version 10 dot something. It was a white knuckle kind of experience. You never knew when things were going to go horribly wrong. 11 was significantly better, but still very, very old school. When we jumped from 11 to 12 and went from a more heuristic type of full self-driving, in other words, if-then statements galore, like millions and millions of those things. Anyway, when we went from that to a neural network model, to a full stack neural network model, that was the 11 to 12 jump. That was a huge jump. And of course, we're still feeling the effects of that in version 13. It's been iterative, but it's gotten way, way better. If you drive an old version like 12.5 or something like that versus 13, there is a significant difference in the full self-driving capabilities. So for Elon to say version 14 is the second biggest update after version 12 from version 11, and also to say that it feels sentient, is a big deal. Next up is China's release of the 6-seater Model Y L, or large, I guess, or long, or something like that. Anyway, in response to this and the fact that Elon hasn't said anything about the US market, Elon very revealingly said this variant of the Model Y doesn't start production in the US until the end of next year, so that would be the end of 2026, right? Might not be ever, given the advent of self-driving in America. So that's the important part of this statement right here. So I, of course, posted my thoughts on why they're not ramping this version of the Tesla Model Y, the L with the 6 seats, because they're going to be putting in all of their effort on the Cybercab, which makes sense according to Elon's post here, given the advent of self-driving in America. What Tesla is clearly going to do in the United States is to prioritize full self-driving, autonomous driving, taxi, ride-hailing kind of stuff over new variants of their vehicles. They're going to continue making their vehicles as they are now, but they're not going to make new variants. So why are they going to do this, and particularly in the United States? Well, one of the reasons is obviously because the $7,500 incentive disappears in just over a month here. So that obviously has Tesla on the defensive. You know, they're obviously not going to sell as many vehicles in the fourth quarter and into 26 as they have thus far. We'll probably see a pretty big spike in sales in the third quarter. That would be my expectation. And then a pretty significant cliff in the fourth quarter, even though that's traditionally the best quarter for car buying. So it's going to have a large effect, and Tesla specifically in the United States. But moreover, in the United States, at least, Tesla has a very clear path to expanding their robotaxi, their cybercab fleet out to a large portion of the country very, very rapidly. A couple of weeks ago, Elon claimed that by the end of the year, by the end of 2025, they will be able to serve about 50% of the US population. Now, of course, 50% of the US population is in probably their 12 largest cities or something. So that means they only really need to expand out to 12 or 15 of the largest cities in the United States to do that. But still, that is a very, very fast, ambitious rollout plan to be able to do something like that. And that, of course, takes us back to the other post where he said version 14 feels sentient. So we're seeing Elon and Tesla's plans here. What they're going to do is they're going to really go all in, at least in the United States, on robotaxis, cybercabs, and version 14 of the software, because it is so much better than version 13, which is already pretty darn amazing, that Tesla believes that they will fundamentally rewrite the rules of driving in the US. Now, we in the US, we love our cars, but we in the US are also squeezed from every end. It's very difficult to afford a car these days. And if Tesla can show that having a robotaxi in your arsenal, right? Maybe you have one car instead of two, and the other car, the other quote car, becomes renting a robotaxi. I would do that personally. I would definitely take the robotaxi back and forth to work, back and forth to the gym, back and forth to the airport so I can do my flying lessons and leave the other car for my wife or something. That would be perfectly acceptable to me as long as the robotaxi was demonstrably cheaper than owning a vehicle vehicle myself. So that's the big metric, and that's what Tesla has to hit. But if they can do that, they could massively disrupt the transportation industry, the market in the United States, and that's really what they're playing for, obviously. But to close the loop of this video, let's pause a moment on another announcement that was just made today within the last 24 hours. This is from Daily 5-Minute News, so nice job here. xAI releases new AI model for physical world understanding. Summary: xAI has launched a new AI model aimed at enhancing the understanding and manipulation of the physical world with potential applications in robotics and autonomous systems, in other words, vehicles. And this, in my opinion, ties directly to Elon stating about Tesla self-driving feeling sentient. We've got his two companies. Elon has talked many times before about how the physical world is the ultimate reinforcement learning grounding, right? If you drop something and it falls on the floor over and over and over again, that's a pretty good grounding in reality. Large language models that are trained on just language alone don't have anything like that level of grounding. And of course, we can recall that Jan LeCun has said that a child of 4 years old approximately has absorbed about the same amount of information, the same amount of bits of information through their eyes, through their fingers, through their nose, their tongue, etc. Through all of that, they've absorbed as much information as all of the internet, of all of human knowledge that's contained on the internet. So all of the stuff that large language models are able to train on right now, and it's obviously not equivalent, it's very different information, but a child of 4 has absorbed that much information, and by the time they're 8, it's twice as much of that information, and by the time they're 16, it's 4 times that much information. And so Elon and obviously xAI, and I agree with this as well, personally, I think that physical grounding is exceptionally important to artificial general intelligence, to a sense of agency within these models, to a sense of knowledge of what's going on, rather than just stochastic parroting of like creating the next token and the next token and the next token and sounding intelligent, but to truly be intelligent. In other words, to be sentient, you have to have your models trained on reality. And what does Tesla do? And what is xAI doing right here? They are creating these models that are based on real world feedback. The way that a Tesla drives is based on the photons that come into the cameras and the IMU, the inertial measurement unit that figures out what the G-forces are and the loading and the steering wheel angles and all of that stuff. That is all physically based. If you make a mistake in the physical world, you can easily crash into a wall or something. That is a pretty solid reinforcement that you probably shouldn't do that in the future. So in my mind, what we're getting from xAI, which is another of Elon's companies, plus what Tesla is doing in the United States by delaying the Model Y L or large to go all in for autonomous vehicles, this all indicates that Elon Musk and his companies very, very firmly believe that this is the path towards artificial general intelligence and towards actual like kind of consciousness or sentience within these beings. I don't think that Elon dropped that word when he said it is sentient. I don't think that's a mistake. And I also don't think it's much of an exaggeration. I think he's really getting at something here. So that's why I wanted to do this video. Alrighty, folks, let me know what you think about all of this down in the comments. Am I crazy to think that Elon Musk actually believes that these cars might become sort of semi-conscious one day, and that xAI is also believing the same thing, that you can create these physically grounded models to create robots, but also large multimodal models that will actually be able to think, to actually have a sense of self, to become semi-sentient or perhaps entirely sentient? Let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. Whether you agree or disagree, just make it constructive comments. That's all cool. While you're down there, if you don't mind liking the video, it really, really helps out with YouTube's algorithm. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.